Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Garrett Mason Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the spot where we combine reality with politics and give you some things to chew on that I think that you'll appreciate. My name's Garrett Mason, and if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe on YouTube and all the socials. That's so important as we push information out so you don't ever miss an episode. And this one today, I'm particularly excited about. As I've been traveling around on the campaign trail, there's been a lot of conversations about, really traditional issues like your energy bill, the cost of living, all the things that you typically hear about when you're running for office and the things that you need to address to make people's lives a little bit better. But there's one thing that has been talked about recently from the federal government, and it's the advent of the new Trump accounts that were passed in the One Big Beautiful Bill. I think it is perhaps one of the greatest investments in our future that have ever been put out by the federal government. I think this is a transformational thing that is going to lift all boats, not just rich people, poor people, young people, old people. This is a monumental achievement by the president and his allies in Congress. And it's even something that is receiving bipartisan support from people like Senator Mark Warner of Virginia and Senator Cory Booker. The Trump accounts, I really do believe, are going to change America's financial trajectory over the next 100 years. I want to start off with a story, and then we're going to walk through what Trump accounts mean for Maine people and what they could mean for you. A few years ago, my grandmother, my mother was an only child, and my grandmother got sick. My grandparents were very hardworking people. My grandfather was a car dealer. He owned a dealership in Bath where he sold new cars and worked very, very hard. Unfortunately, my grandfather passed away in 1997 very unexpectedly, and my grandmother was in her late 50s at the time, and he was only 60 years old. My grandfather had done fairly well for himself, but my grandmother was a stay-at-home mom, and the only thing she had ever done was drive a bus for the Lisbon School Department. And as she was approaching her golden years, what she thought was going to be a time of retirement and enjoying her grandkids with my grandfather suddenly turned into something very different. Over the next 20 years, as life happens, you get sicker, tend to need more medical care, and the things that my grandfather had worked really hard for ended up getting spent a lot quicker than normal. When my grandmother was in her 80s, my mom had passed away, and it was really me and my sister who were taking care of her as she got older. She had a series of strokes, and she ended up, it was definitely time to start looking into long-term care. My grandmother had lived essentially on Social Security for the last 10 years of her life. It was about $1,900 a month. That isn't something that many, if any, can live on nowadays. And my grandmother was the beneficiary of a suite of federal and state programs that helped her get by. I think under the current system that we live under, for many years, really since the 1940s, when the New Deal was passed and Social Security was passed, we have focused on taking care of the end of life and not looking towards a future. I remember when George W. Bush and Al Gore were running for office in 2000, and there was a debate, and Al Gore got made fun of it at the time. I remember an SNL skit making fun of him, but he talked about the Social Security lockbox and how we were going to take Social Security contributions, we were going to put it in a lockbox, and we weren't going to touch it. Government's not very good at touching big sums of money in the budget, especially when things get tight. I think what the president has done with Trump accounts is he's taken a long-term approach on making sure that we're starting to take care of people when they're born and that they'll have something all the way through the end of life. We need programs like Social Security. We need Medicare and Medicaid. We need all of these programs, but they're not enough. They're not enough in the world that we live in. And so Trump accounts are the thing that when you look out 50 years from now could be the difference between surviving and thriving. And I really believe that this program could take a situation like my grandmother was facing. And hopefully when my daughter is that age, we will have made the investments in programs like this here in Maine to make sure that she has a retirement that is full of hope and not one of destitution. And I think that it's important that people know about these because they're not getting enough play. And I really think that they're not getting enough play because it's something done by President Trump. But what if the government made a direct investment in your child on day one, the first day that they're born? And under Trump accounts, if you have a child born between 2025 and 2027, the U.S. Treasury, if you open a Trump account, will put $1,000 in that account for your child. This is, if you just left that $1,000 alone for the next 18 years, by the time that they graduated from high school, if you just looked at average returns on an investment account, they'd have $18,000 when they graduated from high school. Under the Trump accounts, you can contribute up to $5,000 a year as a family, or your grandparents can contribute, aunts and uncles, and employers, which we'll get to in a minute, which I think is the genius of this program. If you maxed out those contributions, your child at age 18 would have $300,000 in their Trump account. And those monies can be used for education. They can be used for trade school. They can be used to buy a business. They can be used to start a business. They can be used to buy a house. It's a very different type of account, which is important as people set themselves up to live the American dream. These are tax-advantaged accounts. Families, employers, philanthropic contributors, corporate contributions can all be made, which is very different from a retirement account, an investment account, or an educational 529. And the best part about it is government contributions don't count towards any of the annual caps. So you can get beyond that through government contributions, which was where I think the state of Maine can play a big part. These are direct contributions to your child, not a government system. They are direct contributions to your child. They're not a program, and they're not a subsidy. From day one, these accounts invest in capitalism. Trump accounts double down on capitalism and give everyone, rich, poor, access and stake in the American economy through the magic of compounding interest. There is absolutely no downside to signing up for this. There's no penalty for participation, no matter how much you make as a family. And even with early withdrawal penalties, the outcomes are transformative for the future of America. There's literally no downside in signing up for this. You know, I think a lot of people might think that an account like this doesn't really matter. It can't really move the needle that much. But most people don't start saving for retirement until their late 20s, early 30s. And that's early for most people. And when your money is invested, it's looked at as in a 20, 30-year time frame. What we're doing with these Trump accounts is you're giving people a 50, 60, 70-year investment horizon for all people. That's transformative wealth for the entire country. The difference between Republicans and Democrats is that we believe that capitalism is the engine of upward mobility. By contrast, you have people running as democratic socialists who just want to steal from people that they deem rich and give to the government in hopes that they're able to hand out the money to the people that they deem get it. This is important because we're doubling down on capitalism. We're doubling down on a rising tide lifts all boats, and it's going to make a big difference in people. This is also an incredible benefit for employers. You know, I hear all over the place when I talk to employers that they can't get people to stay, or they can't retain their workforce. Under the Trump accounts, employers can contribute up to $2,500 per child to their employees' kids' Trump accounts. This is an employer benefit that is tax deductible for the company, and it's a benefit for the employee to be able to have their kids' future funded. Not only contributions to their employees' retirement, but to their children's retirement long after that employee has either retired or left that job. What a lasting benefit for those families. You also have the ability to retain people for a lot longer. You know, Department of Labor statistics say that most people stay at a job 4 or 5 years and then they leave. That's a far cry from the days where you could have a pension and you stick around in your job for 20, 25 years and you get a pension when you leave. That's not the way that the economy works anymore. But under these Trump accounts, what a massive incentive to stick around if you have a company willing to contribute to your kids' retirement while they're still in elementary school. Unbelievable thing. You know, as I thought through the Trump accounts and what it means for people and how you could implement this on a state level, we've already done something very similar here in Maine. Through a generous grant from the Alphon Foundation, every child born in Maine is eligible upon birth for a $500 one-time grant into an educational 529 college account. If you have a child born at the hospital, you get a packet from the Alphon Foundation that gives you everything that you need to sign up for your child's 529. Now, 529s are tax advantage accounts too for college and for further education. And there's grants that are available through the Next Gen program that give you up to $300 more a year beyond your own investment. We're already doing this in Maine. And what we've seen in Maine is that because of grants like this, the people that are signing up for 529s aren't just the rich. It's average, everyday people, middle-class people, lower-income people. Through these 529 programs, we've created a national model that other states have followed. And we can do the same with these Trump accounts. Because one of the things that I've heard in opposition to these is that, well, this is just another vehicle for rich people. Rich people are already doing this. Rich people are already contributing to children's accounts, and they're not tax advantaged. When you look at what's happening with Trump accounts and the rollout here, these are big companies, philanthropic organizations who are realizing the tax benefits and using their own free will, not government coercion, to contribute billions, tens of billions of dollars to America's kids without the government breathing down their neck or forcefully taking it from them. Don't we think that that's a better idea? I do. Right now, you have the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, who are really the jump starters of this. Every child in America under 10 years old today, if you live in a zip code that the average income is less than $150,000, you're going to get $250 in your Trump account. All you have to do is sign up. If you go on to trumpaccount.gov, you can learn more, and it gives you the list of huge companies that are organizing their investments right now, not only to their employees, but to kids all across America. Huge companies making massive contributions directly to your children. Bank of America, Charles Schwab, Charter Communications, Chipotle, if you like Mexican food, Coinbase, Intel, MasterCard, NVIDIA, Uber, Wells Fargo, Visa are all making contributions to Trump accounts. And this is going to ripple out. I was listening to the Treasury Secretary, who I think is probably one of the best spokespeople for the Trump administration. I was listening to the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, talk about on CNBC how this is just the beginning. There's a flood of companies and philanthropists who are going to be adopting certain states to give kids in certain states the opportunity to get some money into their account. They're going to be adopting certain schools, or maybe it's just their employees. And I expect that to happen all over the country. How many people do we know here in Maine who left because, for whatever reason, they started a business and it grew, and and they ended up having to go someplace else to make it work. Or they were very successful outside of Maine and they still have a heartstring to Maine, or their family's originally from Maine generationally, and they just have a connection. I've often said this: a governor needs to be an ambassador to the world. And the next governor, which I hope will be me, but if it's not me or if somebody else, the next governor needs to take this opportunity and run with it and make sure that every Maine kid between 0 and 18 is getting as much money put into their account as humanly possible, because in the long run, this is a cost savings for everyone, for the state, for families, and it gives hope for all of these kids who will have options in their life instead of depending on, hopefully the government will help them out. This will give them opportunity and hope in the future. And the next governor needs to be making sure that they're working just as hard to help these kids from 0 to 18. Because I think so many times we hear invest in kids. We got to invest in kids. And the code word, the dog whistle there, is more education funding. But under this program, we can turn investing into kids into actually investing in them with cash in the American capitalist system. Very important. This is a huge opportunity to bring wealth back into Maine at a scale unlike we've ever seen. So what does something like this cost for Maine? Well, this is just some easy math. There's 250,000 kids under the age of 18 in Maine. If we took it upon ourselves through, a combination of government grants and through philanthropic contributions, through trusts, through corporate contributions, if we wanted to fund every kid's Trump account to the maximum level, you're looking at $1.25 billion a year. Now, I was recently listening to Governor Mills' final State of the State address, and you would have thought it was an episode of The Oprah Show. Governor Mills was handing out checks like you wouldn't believe. Everybody gets $300, and we're going to give this amount of money. And largely, let's just be honest, it was a political speech designed to help her U.S. Senate campaign. Let's just be perfectly honest about it. And that's why she was giving away money that we don't really have. But if we're going to give away money, why don't we put it into something like this, where we will see returns on it for the next 50 years, instead of randomly giving out checks so that somebody can get elected to the U.S. Senate. $1.25 billion a year to give every child in Maine a max out in their Trump account. And what does that mean? If you were able to champion that cause for a child born today until the age of 18, it means $300,000 by the time that they get out of high school. $300,000, and they can choose to use that for education, to buy a house, to buy a business, to start a business with no loans. What incredible upward mobility and opportunity if we were able to do that for every kid. And it should be the next governor's job to go out and secure $1.25 billion every year from a mix of sources to max out those accounts. You want to talk about generational change for Maine? That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. If you took the next generation that had disposable income beyond and above every other state, massive competitive advantage. Massive. So how do we do it? Well, as governor, I can tell you one thing that we're going to look at, and it's going to be in the first budget if I get into office. Refundable state tax credits. We give refundable tax credits for everything. We give them for electric cars. We give them for rehabbing old buildings. We give them for a suite of things. You put heat pumps in your home. Water tank heaters. We give refundable tax credits for everything. Now, people might be asking, Garrett, what's a refundable tax credit? I'm going to tell you. Let's say you owe the government $4,000, the state government $4,000 when it's time to file your taxes. But you invested $1,000 in your child's Trump account. You get a refund of $1,000. 5,000 minus 4,000 is 1,000. That's a refundable tax credit. And instead of handing them out like candy for all these other programs, I'd rather invest in our kids. Let's have a refundable tax credit for investing in these accounts. It's smart. It's middle class targeted, lower income class targeted, and upper income. It's for everybody. It's for everybody. You're not punishing anyone. You're encouraging people to invest in their kids' future. Do the same for employers. For corporate taxes, give them a refundable tax credit to invest in their employees' kids' account. Let's do that. You know, one of the other things too, it's important to measure outcomes. We ought to create a state dashboard for people to be able to look at and see the investments we're making and how much that is changing the economy. The next governor should be tracking this diligently. This is an incredible upward mobility item. It could change Maine's trajectory for the next 100 years, and we need to be tracking it. We need to find ways to encourage massive sums of money to be put in trust so that we can continue to give to these accounts. This is generational change. Generational change. And it's something that we need to grab a hold of. In fact, not just Trump accounts, but there's examples of this throughout the entire federal government. And the resist crowd, I can't even tell you how tired I am of watching the Democrat gubernatorial candidates run to the latest protest and start talking about oppression. People like Hannah Pingree, Angus King, people that have built-in trust funds into their life talking about oppression. It's absolutely ridiculous. We have opportunities that the resist crowd will not take advantage of purely because they were passed under President Trump. Trump accounts. We also have the school choice measures. That's something that each state has to opt into, but not here. We're not going to do it. New Hampshire did. Let me tell you how that works. National school choice model. So there is the opportunity through the One Big Beautiful Bill for people to contribute to states, to private education, to alternate education outside of public education. That could be homeschool, that could be, some private schools, some Christian schools somewhere, whatever. You can get that right now on your federal taxes, but the state has to opt in. Maine won't do it. Maine won't do it because Donald Trump passed the bill. But New Hampshire did. And so right now, a Mainer can contribute to a school or some sort of educational option in another state, so they can send money to another state and get the federal tax credit. But because Maine won't opt in, all of the private college schools or colleges that you can't make that contribution here because you won't get the tax credit. All because Orange Man bad, according to the Democrats. It's ridiculous. We need to work with our federal partners. As governor, I will work with our federal partners to do what's best for Maine and to move Maine forward. Maine is a net receiver. I'm not denigrating our state. It's just a fact. We receive more money from the federal government than we send into it. So the fact that we're going to sit here and just say resist, resist, resist is absolutely foolish. These are opportunities to move our state forward, and we need to take advantage of them. I'm 40 years old. I'm a millennial. I'm an elder millennial. And the conversations that I have with my friends and with people at, my daughter's school, the conversation is largely the same. Millennials will have it worse than our parents did economically. The American dream isn't readily available to our generation as it was in generations past. That's a belief held by the majority of the people that are my age. Now, whether that's true or not, that's for you to decide. I think I think hard work always pays off. I think that's just a principle of life. I think it's also just a biblical principle for whatever that's worth. Hard work always pays off. But the American dream isn't as achievable as it once was. And for the first time, we're looking at an American dream that may not be as good as the generation before us. Every parent, my grandfather, both of my grandfathers worked really hard. One was did roofing and siding and sold those products. One I already spoke about was a car dealer. Worked really hard to give their kids a little bit more than what they had, and they were successful in that. My parents worked hard to make sure that I had a little bit more than what they had. And I'm going to do the same for my daughter. But it's a lot harder for most families than it has been in the past. These accounts, school choice tax credits, some of the things that are being rolled out throughout the federal government that are just as easy as us opting in to these programs on the government level, are a chance to reset the trajectory and make the American dream affordable and achievable again. And we have to do better than just saying no because it's Donald Trump. Like I said, these ideas are being embraced by some other Democratic states. The governor of Colorado opted into the school choice program, a Democrat, a very liberal Democrat. We can take advantage of these programs. We can pursue them and make a real difference for kids. I try to tell my daughter this, and these are lessons as she gets older that I'm trying to instill in her, that I can't give you the world, but I can give you a chance. And I think that's what every parent wants to do, is give their kid a chance. And the options that my administration will provide, in my opinion, will give massive hope to parents and kids and grandparents. The other option is democratic socialism, where you just take and take and take and give it to a greedy government bureaucracy in hopes that you'll get something in the long run. I know which option I'd rather have. This is about hope. I've talked in this campaign many times about the fact that people need hope. And this is something that gives that. We must embrace it. Thank you for tuning in today. Next time we come back, I'm hopeful we're going to bring on another candidate that you should pay attention to. We had a great response on our episode with Janet Bodwin from Lewiston. I do hope that you get out for that special election and send her to the State House. There's a lot going on the campaign trail. It's been a lot of fun to go around the state and talk to people. The best part about campaigning is that you meet people that you never otherwise would have met in your life. And so we've had a great time doing that. But please send us your thoughts. We're always reading the messages and making sure that we're hitting issues that people care about. But please send us your messages, like us, follow us on all the socials, and we will be back with you next week. Tune in soon.